Hey everyone, this is Joe Brady. I'm really looking forward to showing you our 4-light studio. We've got a lot of really cool gear. We're really going to make it work well, and it's going to make your life a lot easier and keep your photo shoots just working smoothly. We've got some cool gear from Pocket Wizard. We've got a cool meter from Sekonic. I'm going to show you how you can control your lights right from the meter. We're going to control the lights using some light shaping tools from Bowens. And use some new monolights, the Geminis. In addition to this really cool thing, this folding ring that allows your softboxes to just fold down to nothing. Makes storing them, makes using them really easy, makes putting them together really easy. I don't know why everyone's not doing that. And of course, we've got Bethany back. So we'll get some beautiful images of her.
So I decided kind of at the last minute, I want a tether. That's going to allow me to shoot directly in the computer. It writes to the camera as well, but then I have it in two places and I'm going to get a better preview on my full screen since this is calibrated. So to do that, I've got some essential stuff. Coffee cup, that's important.
And we're of course going to use a color checker for perfect color calibration. So join us as we go on to set, use 1 to 4 lights with our beautiful friend Bethany and get some great images, both using a white background and darkening it up and going right to a dark background for some real dramatic results. So we'll be starting soon, just stay tuned.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm Joe Brady and I'm your host today. We're going to take a look at the reasons, the gear, and the techniques for setting up a 4-light portrait studio so that you can create beautiful portraits both efficiently and consistently. So what is our goal today? I've chosen to set up a 4-light studio because it pretty much allows you to cover any lighting need you might run into. A main, a fill, a hair light, and a kicker light in place. With those lights, you're pretty well set. Now, you might not need all 4 lights for every portrait session, but knowing how to set them up and have them in place will help you get into a rhythm during your shoot. And then when you need to add lights to create shape and dimension, you can do it with just a flip of a switch. To make this happen, I'm going to use some great tools. Yeah, I know, I'm going to make you spend some money again, but these tools save you time and help you to get better results, and both of those things mean more money for your business. So what we're going to do as a way of getting started is we're going to take a trip to my studio in Warwick, New York. It's not really a real large space. The shooting area is roughly 12 by 24 feet. The ceilings are barely 8 feet high. But we have no trouble shooting portrait sessions of up to 5 people there. So what we're going to do is take a tour of the gear. We're going to see the lights and the other gear involved, and then we'll start putting it to use. So let's take a quick trip to my studio. So here we are in my home studio. It's not a huge space, and you don't have to have a huge space to really do effective portraits. This shooting area that I've got is basically 12 by 24, and I don't have high ceilings. Yeah, I wish I did, but these ceilings are just barely, they're not even quite 8 feet high. So the only limitation it has is, well, my hair light, and I'm going to move that a little bit later. So what we're here to take a look at is a 4-light portrait set. Now, why 4 lights? Do I need all these lights from every portrait? The answer is probably no. In fact, in a lot of cases, I might just use 1 light and maybe throw in a reflector. However, having a setup like this allows you to move quickly. You don't have to waste time. You got your subject in place. You can make decisions very quickly. You don't have to go moving around gear. So let's take a tour around to the 4 lights that I've got, and we'll take a look at the gear that I've got to make it all work smoothly. These are Bowens GM500 Pros, by the way. These are really nice lights, pretty heavy duty, will recycle really fast and give you a wide range. What I want to show you is on the back, I've got these hooked up to Pocket Wizards. They're hooked up to Pocket Wizard +3s here. And the reason that I chose the +3 is that I've got 4 zones here, A, B, C, and D. And the beauty of that is it's going to allow me to turn these lights on and off right from the top of the camera. In fact, I've got the one that's going to sit on my camera right here. This happens to be my B light. So if I just rotate around and just have B, and when I hit the test button, only this light fires. Really makes it very easy. Now, another beauty of using a system like this is you don't have to have all the same light. Yes, everybody makes radio systems for their high-end strobes. In fact, there's a radio system available for this. But maybe you don't have 4 of the same light. Maybe you've got older lights. Beauty of the Pocket Wizard is we're shooting in manual, so it doesn't care what light it is. You just need to have the right cable to go from the Pocket Wizard into your light. And you can mix and match. You can even mix in speed lights if you want to add an extra light. You don't even have to have studio strobes. So let's take a tour around. So this is actually going to end up being my B light. It's going to be my fill light. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to meter these separately. So let's come on the other side over here. All right, so this is going to be my main light. I'm going to go for probably about F8 on this, and we'll see the metering in just a minute. Again, this is another softbox on here, a Bowen's Lumiere. It's a nice size for doing headshot, a 3/4. I'll use a bigger one. I'll probably go up to like a 4x6 if I'm going to do full length. So this is going to be my main. The other one's going to be my fill. However, how do I determine what's my main and my fill? What kind of lighting pattern do I want to use? My main light, if I'm going to light me, which I would hate to do, but if I'm going to light me, I want my main light to light the short side. I want to have it light the side of my face away from the camera, because short lighting thins. I can use all the help I can get. Over here I've got my fill light. I'm going to have that a stop lower. So I'm going to have F8 here, 5/6 on my fill, and that's going to give me a 2-to-1 lighting ratio. Fairly gentle lighting ratio, but it will have that kind of shaping effect. All right, so this is going to be my kind of all-purpose light. I've got a 1x3 strip softbox on here. I'm going to use this as a rim light, kind of a kicker light, and I'm going to use it to light the background. Now, I just wanted to show you a couple features about this because we're going to add some shaper tools to it to kind of direct the light even a little more. Now, inside these softboxes, you can see there's an intermediate baffle in between the light and the outside here. It's silver inside. And then I have the main diffuser panel. Now, you can put this diffuser panel either all the way in, there's a Velcro on the inside of this, or you can have it right to the edge. It depends what you're going to do. If you want to have a little more control of the light, you want to be able to make it a little more directional, then put this panel all the way on the inside. That gives you these fins that allow you to feather and direct the light a little bit more. If you want kind of the light to go a little more everywhere, you can bring this right out to the edge. Or if you were going to mount multiple lights side by side and create maybe one giant softbox with multiple lights, then I'd take this panel and put it right out to the edge and let them butt up against each other. The reason I really want to have this recessed is because I have a soft grid to further make the light directional. And you see right here, this has got Velcro all around the edges as well. And I'm just going to put this inside this, and by having the light go through these grids here, it's going to keep it very directional, and it's going to keep it from spreading out. Because I don't want to start throwing too much light on the background. I want to control it. I want to decide how much light is going to hit me, or not me, but the subject, or the background. There it is. So now I've got my kicker light over here. I'm going to use this to kind of rim light the subject. I've got the grid in here to keep adding more light into the background. So that's my third light. My fourth light I've got right above here. Now I'm going to have my subject sitting because these are going to be kind of headshots. So I've got this above generally, and this is a guideline, not a rule. Generally, I'll put the hair light on the opposite side of the main. Now I've got this up on a boom arm. I'll show you that detailed in a second. The other thing I've got is a grid. So let me turn this around for a second. This also has a grid in its spot. You can see right there. Now this is a honeycomb grid. Again, this will keep the light very directional. It'll keep it from spreading out because I just want to add a little splash of light on the back of the head opposite the main. And what that will do is add a little bit more separation between the subject and the background. Again, I've got a Pocket Wizard. This is my D light. So I've got this set on channel 18 on zone D. I wanted to show you something particular about the setup for the hair light. Now again, these GM500s are fairly heavy heads, and I've got it way up here on this arm. In fact, as I mentioned, I'm probably going to swap this out for a 400, which is a little bit lighter, smaller monoblock. But what I've got this on, instead of a standard light stand, I've got this on a C stand. Now, generally in the studio, we will prefer to use C stands rather than standard light stands. Depends on the subject as well. We've got little kids running around, we'll definitely have all the C stands out front. The beauty of a C-stand is they're much more stable. They're heavier. You pay a little more for it, but if you have your own studio, invest in a couple of C-stands. Now, I've got an extension arm off the C-stand, so I've got a grip head here on top of the C-stand with my extension arm. The light is connected to that. And then I've got a grip arm support bar right here, which is creating this triangle, which is making this very strong. I could practically hang on this thing and it's not going to go anywhere. Now this is connected onto something called a three-way clamp. We're not going grip today, but if you're not familiar with this kind of stuff, do take a look at it. This is called grip equipment. C-stands, extension arm, and a support arm. And then also down on the legs of the C-stand, I've actually got two sandbags, which you can maybe see right down over here, and they're adding extra weight to counter the weight of my hair light way up top. So the combination of the C-stand, the sandbags, the extension arm, and this grip support arm make this a very stable system because you do not want this falling down on your subject. Now we're not going to photograph me. You don't want to see pictures of me. We've got a special friend who we're going to photograph, and we're actually going to do that in a day or so. We're using today for setup and to test our set. And that's what you should do in your studio. Have everything set up in place. Yes, you're going to want to adjust, you're going to want to change your lights, you're going to want to turn things on and off. But if you get everything in place, once your subject arrives, you can start right away and you can keep that flow going. Because if you start a shoot and then have to take 5 minutes to move lights around, it's going to completely destroy the flow of the shoot. It's going to throw you off and it's going to throw your subject off. All right, so that was a tour of the set. There's a couple of things I'd like to point out, and one is that you don't necessarily have to have 4 studio type lights to accomplish this. One of the benefits of the Pocket Wizard Plus 3, like I've got here on top of my camera, is that you can use them with practically any strobe you might have. It can be an older unit, it can be a speed light. In fact, frequently I've used speed lights as hair lights in the past with a little grid on them. Yes, they don't recycle as fast, but you can get away with them. That said, investing in a 4-light set, like the Bowens Gemini monolights that we're using, is a great idea, and you can do it fairly inexpensively. Now, one thing I hope you guys know is I won't actually show you anything that I don't use. If I don't like the gear, I refuse to show it. And I've really fallen in love with these, as has my wife, because it's cost me money to do this. Because this is a Gemini 400R. Now, this kit, 2 of these, 2 monolights, the stands and umbrellas, is under $850. Now the Gemini 500s that we were using do have some advantages. They're more powerful, they have a faster recycle time, and they have a really wide power range. But I understand that not everyone has unlimited funds, me included. And as I mentioned, I have to be careful what I let my wife see me bring into the studio because she always wants it. However, if you're a portrait photographer, having a good set of lights is an investment you'll never regret. In the interim, using a speed light for your hair light is certainly a possibility. Just understand it's going to have power and recycle time limitations. Having good equipment, again, gets it out of the way so that you can concentrate on taking pictures and not lose stuff. So we've seen the set. The next step after getting everything in place is to set up the light ratios. Getting your light power and ratio set before your subject arrives on set will make the session shorter and much more efficient. Time savings like this allow you to get more accomplished in the day, and time is money. The first thing always when you're doing your lighting is get your main light set. Everything else you do and every other light or reflector you use is going to be based on what you do with the main. I'm going to be starting out with my main light around f8 or so. Later on, I'm going to bring that up to add some more depth of field. By the way, this may be an area where some of you have questions. How do I pick the best aperture for this subject? Now, this is really a subject of its own. So we're going to be doing a show, actually next month, on a completely different approach to setting your lights. It's going to be more based on aperture / look / depth of field that you like, and we'll fix the lights based on your like first rather than measuring them. So that's for next month. So for today, let's head back to my studio and we're going to measure the lights and get our light ratios set. Let's take a look. So now I've got my lights all in place. It's time to set up my lighting ratios and to measure each of the lights. So what I'm going to go for is something around f8, f9 for my main. I want to be a stop below that from my fill. So F8, one stop down would be 5.6. If this is 9, one stop down would be 6.3 there. As far as my kicker light goes, I'm going to probably go F4 or so as a start. I don't want it to add a lot of light, just a little bit of rim light. And as far as my hair light goes, generally for the hair light, I like to have it match the main if the subject hair is dark. So if that's 9, I'm going to have that F8 or F9, unless they're blonde. If they're blonde, I'm going to drop it down maybe another full stop. First, I'm going to use the Pocket Wizard to fire the meter, and then I'm going to switch over and I'll show you can actually fire these lights from this meter because it has Pocket Wizard stuff built into it. So I just hit the measure button, point it back to the light. I'm just going to fire my A light, which is right here, and it comes back and it gives me a number, and it says 6.3. So I'm one stop low. I just need to adjust that. So I'm going to turn the dial one click. So I just went up to the light, I just turned the main dial one click, which should bring me up one stop. So if everything works right, that's going to bring me from 6.3 to F9. So again, I hit the measure button on the side of the meter, pop the test button, and F9, there we go. So I'm going to base everything I do off of this main light. It's really important you get this one correct first. Now when we have our actual subject here, I'm going to adjust the height of the light to the subject, and we'll discuss that when she's here. Now let's go over to the fill light here. Now again, the reason it's a fill, remember, camera's over that position, so this is going to be my more shadow side. This will be my brighter side because of the main. So that's again short lighting here. My fill over here is going to be my B light. Now I can turn off my A and just make B on the dial and do exactly the same thing. Hit the measure button on side of the meter. It'll wait for 90 seconds to see a flash. Point it back to the light. Hit the test button. And let's see, I got F4.5. Let's try that one more time. 4.5. So I need to come up a little bit from that because I want to get it to 6.3. That'll put it one stop below this, which means I have to come up one full stop. So let's do one full click of the dial here. So one click of the dial. Again, point back to the light, take my measurements, pop the light, and look at that, 6.3. So F9, 6.3, exactly one stop apart. Then that leaves my other two lights. Just to show you something a little bit different, I'm going to do this from the meter now. I'm going to change the meter from just its kind of dumb, just fire, read the flash mode, to the transmitter mode. And I can then go into the meter, and I'll show you this up close later. And on my standard channels, I'm on channel 18. This is my C light. So I'm going to turn off everything except for C right on here. Hit OK, and what I can do is just come around and measure just that light, and just that light fires, and I did it all from the meter. Now that came in at 3.6. I want it to be about a third of a stop above that, so let me just adjust the dial here. So 3/10 is a third of a stop. Let's try that again. Again, I don't have to use the Pocket Wizard because it's built into this meter. And 4.5, actually I like that. So 6.3, 4.5, F9. Lastly will be my hair light. And again, I want that to be close to my main 8 or 9. So I'm going to turn this one off. Actually, I'm not going to turn it off. I really don't have to because I've got this dome on the top of the meter. I can do dome in or dome out. And in a studio setting, having it dome in allows just the light that's directional to hit it. In fact, I can even mask it with my hand to keep that other light from hitting it and just get the hair light. So let me turn the hair light on. That's D. Hit OK. Hit the measure button. And I'm getting F10, a little bit hot. Let's do one more. I might have had it up a little high. F9, so it's exactly matching my main. So F9, F9, 4.5 on my kicker, and then 6.3 on my fill. I've got all my lights set up. Now, I may, as I mentioned, I may start out just using one of these lights. I may just use the main, or I may just use the main and the hair light. And if I want to do that again, I can do it from the top of the camera using the Pocket Wizard. So I can just turn on A and D. So on the front of the dial, it now says channel 18 A and D. If I hit the test button, just these two lights will fire. And that's exactly what happens. So I'm going over my notes, making sure everything I've got set up in my set is what I'm going to need. So again, what are we after? Well, we want a studio lighting setup that's going to save time. I've got everything in place. I'm pretty much prepared for any eventuality. We're going to do some different stuff. I am going to move some lights around with our subject, but this basic set gives me everything I need as a starting point. As I mentioned, right here I've got my main, right there I've got my fill. Well, if my subject ends up having this be their better side, everybody likes to think they have a better side, then I'll put that towards the camera, which will mean I'll be switching to this side. In that case, that light becomes my main, that becomes my fill. And it's just a matter of adjusting the power. I've mentioned I've got my other lights. I've got my grid here on my strip box. I'm going to use this as a rim light. I'm also going to do some experimenting and use it as a background light. The hair light above my head, we'll use that when we need it. Might not need it. We might use that as a background light. But again, we've got everything in place. It's really flexible, really easy to do. I've got my shot list here. I'm going to do some with just the main, or I'll do some with the main and fill. And if you have it all planned out ahead of time, it's going to go faster and smoother. Yes, of course, always things happen that don't go according to plan. You have to adapt for that. But at least I don't have to worry about my gear. My lights are in place. It's a beautiful thing. It's ready to go. I've got my meter. They're all measured, so I don't have to worry about that. Just get my subject in here. And I know you want to see our subject. You don't want to see pictures of me. You'll know who it is. She'll be here shortly. All right, let's review some of the questions that have come in. And by the way, if you joined us late, take advantage of the chat room. If you got a question for me, put it in there. Jen's monitoring the questions, and she'll send them over to my iPad here on set. First of all, someone asked, what is my preferred background material for white? I've tried different materials. I've tried vinyl. I've tried canvas. And you know what? I end up going back to seamless paper. It's relatively inexpensive stuff. You don't have to worry about getting dirty. You just cut it off and throw it away. It's really the way to go for me. We've done the same thing with our green screen. I do have a green fabric screen, but I found that it's a lot easier to deal with the white. I just hang it up, you roll it out, and when you've got people walking all over it and it gets dirty and torn, just cut it off and buy another one. It's really not that expensive way to do. Someone asked, can you use other pocket wizards like a +2 or the Mini TT1 Flex TT5 system? The answer to that is yes. Now I've got a +3 that I'm using, as you've seen. Let me get it off my camera here a second. Now, a couple of things. If you have a +2, remember a +2 is a basic trigger, 4 channels. That's it, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you don't have the zones. You don't have the A, B, C, D, so you can't turn lights on and off from the +2. You just have to have everybody on the same channel, and they're just going to fire. Can you work that way? For sure. I like the +3s because of the advantage it offers that way. As far as the Mini Flex system, can you use that with these lights? The answer again is yes, but what you need to do is set one of the channels. Remember, you've got 2 channels on those units. You need to set one of the channels to a function called trigger only. Then it will be able to talk to these lights. Now when you set a Mini or when you set a Flex, really is what you're doing. When you set a Flex to trigger only, it basically is becoming a +3. You have control of ABC, not ABCD, and you can turn them on and off from the camera if you have an AC3. But you just want it on trigger only. It's just sending out a signal of fire because there's no TTL when you're doing that. Here's a good question. I guess some of you are hearing this through the audio. Do the Bowens monolights I'm using have fans running? The answer is yes. And actually in this small space that we're in, they actually are a little on the loud side. And that's only on the 500s. The 400 right here that we were using is silent. You can't hear it. But the 500s, and we've got 4 of them in here all running with all the fans, yeah, you can hear them. Let's see. Someone asked, is there a reason I put the kicker opposite of the main, or other than my own preference? Actually, there is. Yes, well, 1, yes, it is my preference. But 2, and you're going to see this later when we switch to a black background, I frequently use 3 lights. I don't often use 4. I mostly use 3. I'll use 4 if I have a bigger group and I want to have the main and fill to even the lighting out. If I'm dealing with a single subject, most often I don't use a fill. I'll use a main, the hair light, and the kicker. And what the kicker does is, being opposite of the main, it adds light down the side of the body opposite the main to separate it out. That'll become real obvious a little bit later when we shoot on the black background. Someone asked why I chose these f-stops. To me, it was a good starting point. And this, again, as I mentioned, this is a subject for another day. We can spend an entire session just going over how to choose your f-stop and why. And that's what we're going to do. That show will be on in March, so stay tuned for that. And I'll show you the effect of different lenses, different apertures, different f-stops. I just said that the same twice. I meant focal lengths. Everywhere from 1.4 up to 11 or 16, and how that combines with the focal length to affect the feeling of your image. Come back to see us in March, we'll do that. Someone asked, what is a C-stand? And can I show one? Yeah, I will. Let me just come on over here. I'll just bring it into the set. This is a C-stand. Now, you guys have all seen standard light stands, and that's what ships with pretty much everybody's light kits. A C-stand is a heavier studio stand. If you're not using these in your studio, I highly recommend you do. They're not a huge investment, just $125 or so. And they are much heavier, they are much more stable, and you can put a light on that, and your lights, you're gonna have an investment in your lights, but you can have this stand go way over, and they'll just drop back into place because they're bottom heavy. One feature I do really like on, this is a Kupo C-stand, is it has available a base called a turtle base, so that if you're traveling, you can make it smaller. And all you do is you pull this ring, and then the legs collapse, whoops, so that they'll fold flat. And you can also just take this piece off. We started using these in our studio, and especially if you've got kids running around, you want to have your lights be safe. And as you saw with our hair light, that light was just cantilevered out way too far for a standard light stand to hold it. Invest in a couple of C-stands and you'll never use standard light stands for high lights again. Protects your gear, small investment, huge return, so definitely take care of that. Let's see, anything else before we continue on? Let me take a real quick look. Okay, somebody asked, are the main and the fill both gridded? And the answer is neither of them are. In fact, I can turn it, I wanted to show you something on this anyway. Actually, Rick, if you'd follow me over here. This is where the fill would be, and you can see these are not gridded. I've just got them out. I don't typically grid main lights, especially on a big softbox. I save that for the kicker. What I wanted to show you something really cool about these, and I don't know why everyone doesn't do this. I'm going to take this softbox off. For those of you that use softboxes in your studio, you've probably seen that they can be a real pain in the derriere to put together and take apart. Plus, you went through so much effort to do that, you hate taking them apart and they take up so much room if you leave them open. Well, Bowens came out with this quick release ring that completely changes how you deal with softboxes. And again, as I said, I don't know why everyone doesn't do this. There's a little switch here and you just flip it and the whole thing folds down to nothing. How cool is that? So you can hang them. We have them hanging in our studio. You can keep them together. They'll hang relatively flat against a wall, or if you want to travel with them. Also, putting them together, if you've ever tried to bend these metal bars into place, that last one is always tough. With this, it's not. It just falls into place, and then when you're ready, you simply flip it up into place, and that's it. These are the coolest things. So if you're looking to get some new softboxes, get these. And regardless of what light you have, by the way, this folding ring is separate from the mounting ring. So there are mounting rings for different kinds of lights. So you can use the Bowens softboxes and then just buy the adapter ring for your lights if it's a mount that's different than this. Very cool stuff. All right, let's continue on and then we'll take some more questions when we come back. So we got the lights in position. They've all been metered. We'll do a quick final metering once our subject is in place. That's just going to take a second. The beauty is that with very little fuss, we're ready to start capturing images. Now, by way of demonstrating the lights, in the next sequence back in the studio, what I'll do is I'll take images of each light separately so you can see the individual contribution. Now, before we do head back, let's review the radio triggers and the meter that's being used. So here I've got my Pocket Wizard Plus 3. And as you can see around the dial, I've got the A, B, C, D. So if I want to just have my A light on, I can just turn everything off except A, which is my light just to my side here. If I hit the test button, the light fires. It's just really that simple. If it sounds simple, it is. If I want to turn on more lights, I just go around, kind of around the horn here, A, B, C, D, hit the test button, and my lights fire. There's just a single pin on these things, so if I put it on top of my camera again, it doesn't care what camera you're using. As long as it's got a standard hot shoe, it's going to fire the lights. It's really that simple. Now, in addition, one thing I really like using in the studio is this is a Sekonic 478DR, probably one of my favorite studio meters. And the reason is I can control my lights from here. So let's take a closer look. So if I come up to the top here, I've got the metering modes, and here's our radio transmitting mode. I click on the little wrench icon, and then right here it says radio channel set. So I'm dealing with standard channels, and I've got my pocket wizards on 18. And here is the ABCD zones, just like we have on the +3s. So again, if I just want to fire my main light, my A light, I just hit OK. And then when I push the measure button, it fires my light. So again, I can walk around the studio, come up, and fire my light. By the way, you might have seen this light firing also. That's because it has a slave trigger. Now, let's say you don't own a pocket wizard for each of your lights. Can you still do this? The answer is yes. I've got a pocket wizard right now on the main. I've got one on the hair light, and that's it. These have sensor cells in them. And I don't know if you can see right here, but there's a little light that says cell. And I can turn that on and off right from the back of the light. So if I turn it off, when I've popped the light over to this side, only it fires. And whoops, let me get my reading. In fact, let's do that. I'll take a reading right here. I just point back to the light, hit the measure button, and it tells me 5.6, 160th of a second, 100 ISO. Put that number in the camera, you're done. It's going to be perfect exposure. If I want another light to fire along with it, and I don't have a pocket wizard for it, I can flip on the cell, which is right here on top of the meter, top of the light, hit the button, and then they both fire. So it's a way that you can extend. You don't have to have a pocket wizard on every light. The advantage of doing it the way I did is that I can turn those lights on and off without having to go on the set. Particularly, you're probably really going to at least want to have another one that's on your hair light, because you don't want to have to bring the light up and down in order to be able to turn it on and off. So if you had to have it on 2 lights, one on your main, one on your hair light, and you'd be good to go. We'll take a closer look at the lights themselves when we return, but let's start shooting. Our subject has arrived on the set and is raring to go. You probably saw her on the trailer if you were here early with us, and it's hard to believe it's been 6 months since we've seen her. So let's start shooting. So look who's here. She's back. We've missed her. Haven't you guys missed her? I know you'd much rather see pictures of her being taken than me, so that's what we're going to do. Now, she's going to go up with Jen and get herself more beautifuler, but before that happens, I just wanted to do a test with her in position just to make sure the lighting's working. And just to review real quick, we've got our main light over here in a big softbox, fill light over here in exactly the same softbox. Again, the reason for that is I can just change the powers and switch main versus fill depending on which way I want to have Bethany face. Right over here, I've got a kicker light. That's adding light to this side of her shoulder, which will help separate out from the background. And then lastly, I've got a hair light here. Now, the other day when we were setting up, hey, I am wearing the same clothes, aren't I? Oh, well. I changed most of the clothes, but kept the same continuity. Okay, so what I did was, I used to have a Gemini 500 up here. I felt that was a little too heavy, physically heavy a light to put up on the boom arm here, because if I didn't have a big enough counterweight. So what I did was I swapped it out with the Gemini 400. Same kind of monolight. Going to be great for power and all, but it's a lighter unit, so it doesn't have as much stress down on the boom arm. Other than that, all the other 3 lights are Gemini 500s. So I've got my kicker over here illuminating the side. I've got the hair light with a grid that is coming onto the opposite side of Bethany's head from the main, and is also going to contribute some light to her shoulder. Now, we're not going to see this as dramatically with a white background, because the main and the fill are going to illuminate this white pretty well. But later on, we're going to switch. We're going to put a dark background here, and then you're going to see the contribution of the hair light and the kicker light and become much more important. However, that said, just the addition of a hair light, even with this light background, is going to add some shape and definition to her far side. So what I'm going to do as a test, just to make sure everything's in place, I'm going to shoot each light in sequence. Just the main, just the fill, just the kicker, just the hair, so that we can see where the light from each of those contributions is landing. Then I'm going to add some combinations. I'll do the hair and the main, the main and the kicker, just the fill, kicker, and hair light, and then we'll do all four together and see what we get. Then we can make the decision for the look and the mood we're after, which combination of lights we want. Could be one, could be two, could be all four. But the beauty of having all these lights here and being able to control them right from the top of the camera with the Pocket Wizard is going to make things go smoothly. And we like quick and smooth, don't we? Okay, so you go, oh no, I'm going to do some shots and then you can go get more beautifuler. Okay, so F10, F11. So this is just going to be the main, no other light. And again, we did that all I did was turn on the main right from the top of the Pocket Wizard. Now, just the fill light, same pose, and we get to see where the light from the fill's coming in. Now let's just do the kicker. And if you guys hear any weird sounds coming through the audio, it's not me, it's my dog upstairs. And there's the hair light. And then lastly, let's turn everybody on. And here's all four lights. And nice gentle portrait. Cross your arms on your knee. Yeah, right like that. Beautiful. Beautiful, okay. Bethany's up doing a wardrobe change, so while she's doing that, we're taking advantage of moving some of the lights a little bit. I want to change the mood a little bit. So what I did was I took my main, and you notice it's actually pointing over that way in front of me. And the reason I did that is I brought it close because I want to have the wrap of the light, but I'm feathering it now. By having the light being pointed this way, I get the wrap of that internal reflector inside to come around this side of the face, which will make for a very soft gradation. The other thing I'm doing is, even though I've got a white background here, by having the light go this way, it will keep this light off the background. So it's going to allow me to make this white background actually a lot darker. In fact, I'm going to turn off the room lights. I've got a room light on here. And I turned off the modeling lights off of the fill so that the only light that's coming through is off the main. Now, I do have the kicker still on, but it's in a grid and it's already pointing this way, so it's not going to affect the background. And the hair light is also in a grid, so it's only going to come here. So what my goal is, as soon as she gets back, is I'm going to have her in this position. I've already metered, so I already know from here that I'm, a little under F14. Yeah, let's call it F14. F14 here. I've already adjusted my hair light, which is also F14. Again, dark hair, I'm going to match the hair light to the main. Those are the only two lights I'm going to use to start. I may add in the kicker to add a little bit of splash of light across the back of her shoulder. But everything is already set up. When she gets here, she can just sit down. We can get right into it. And again, this is what makes it quick. And again, being able to control which light I turn on and off right from the top of the camera just keeps this process going. If it's making it sound easy, it's supposed to. It really is easy. Once you get this set up, you can just keep things going. Beautiful. Okay, eyes at me, chin down. So as I mentioned, we got the light feathered. I've got the light coming across here. So what that's going to do is, even though we have the ambient light, it's pretty low. So I've got my shutter speed up to 160th of a second, and I'm going to meter the light. So what we're going to have is a fairly gentle transition from light to dark because I have the big softbox close, but the far side of her face is going to go in very deep shadow. To counter that, to add a little more dimension, I do have the hair light going on here, which is going to shine the light right here, and the opposite light will add dimension. So it's important when I'm this close that I meter. By the way, since I have this light coming across this way, and I've got the hair light with a grid, there's really very little light going in the background. In fact, we do have a studio video light on that I'm going to turn off. It's actually going to make this white background start to go to a pretty dark gray, which is pretty cool to be able to do that. So I take my reading, get a little closer. F14, that's our number. Put that in the camera. Okay, so right here, beautiful. Okay, right where you are, turn your head to me very slightly, right there. Good. All right. Start to come back around on me and rotate your shoulders. All right, a couple more questions. And by the way, thank you guys for the questions. This is one of the advantages of doing this live, is that I get to take your questions. I get to fill in some of the holes that have questions that you guys want answered. So thank you for that. Great questions today. One, and this is not an intuitive thing, and it's a good question you asked. Somebody said, why have chrome C-stands? Won't they reflect? You would think they would, but I've been using these things for a while, and I've never had one cause a light to change in a set. And in fact, Rick mentioned he has a lot of experience with rental houses, both in New York and LA, and all of the rental houses, and when somebody rents a stands for a professional shoot, they're all C-stands, they're all chrome. That said, if you really don't like the idea of chrome for some reason, even though it's going to be hard to get it to cause anything to happen in your set, they are available in black. So, just that the black paint does get dinged up after a while. They are kind of painted. So really chrome, it works fine. Someone asked, can you use a Multimax with the +3 on the camera and have the same control? The answer is absolutely. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with, the Multimax is kind of the top of the line pocket wizard. It can do everything. Everything that we're doing here plus more. So if you want to find more about it, you can go on to pocketwizard.com. But yes, it has all the zones, all the channels that the +3 has. Someone asked, will the kicker light cause lens flare or flash back into the camera? The answer to that is no, and the reason is, it's another reason, you can see the grid on the kicker. This keeps the light very directional. I don't have anything coming back into the camera. So as long as your camera is not actually seeing the face of the light, it's not going to be a problem. But again, good question. Someone said, I did not point my meter at the camera with all the lights active, or would I? Would this tell how to set the camera? Let's talk about that real quick, because this is an important point. First of all, when I'm measuring individual lights, typically I'll put the dome in on the lumisphere and the dome out for a final lighting. That said, as you're going to see in our next shoot when I drop down to 3 lights, when I have a main and then a hair light and a kicker, the only one that's really illuminating the face is the main. I don't want to meter back when I've got dark in the scene back to the camera, because that's going to end up causing it to overexpose. I need to make sure that the main part of the light that's hitting the light side of the face is exposed correctly. So I don't meter back to the camera, I meter to the light. So even though my camera is, say, where you guys are, if my main is here, that's how I meter, into the light, not back to the camera. Because if I come back to you and meter, well, it's only going to get a fraction of the light. If there were other lights coming from here, yes. If I'm using a main and a fill, my final reading will be dome out back to the camera position, like where you guys are. With just a main, however, just here. So if there's no light, either ambient or strobe, coming from the other side, don't do this, because this is going to blow out. Meter to the light with a single light. Good question. Little experimentation, and there's variations on this, even depending on skin tone. We've talked about that in the past, and we'll continue to do so in the future. Someone asked about a sketch from above to see the position of the lights. Good request. What we'll do is when we post the video, we'll include a sketch, a layout with the lights, so you can see the position of everything to the subject. Someone asked, what ISO? For studio strobes, I prefer, whenever possible, to come to the lowest ISO possible. For me, that's generally 100, and I'll stay there. The reason for that is, I really like dark backgrounds. As you're going to see, we're going to use a black background shortly, and when I'm photographing Bethany, she's got raven black hair, and she's wearing a black dress. I want the minimum amount of noise, and when I'm dealing with black, since that's really deep in the shadows, I don't want to have any colored noise start to show up. So I shoot the lowest ISO possible. Next week, however, we're going to do a different session that I'll talk to you about a little bit later, where we're going to use continuous lights that aren't as powerful. So for that, I will boost the ISO up to 800 or so. But whenever possible, lower the ISO for me is better. And lastly, again, somebody might have joined us a little late, asking, can you mix lights? Can you use a portable flash like an SB800? That's a Nikon flash for you. That's a Nikon. No, that's a Nikon flash for you Nikon guys. SB800 and 900s. If you have a Canon 580EX2 or something like that, can you mix those or any other flash? The answer is absolutely. I mentioned earlier that in the past I have used one of those simple speed light strobes as a hair light. So yes, you can do that. You don't have to have 4 monolights. So let's continue on. As you saw, we got some great results with that white background. Now, since I shoot tethered into Lightroom, I also know ahead of time that there's going to be some edits that I may add to each image. As you probably noticed, I shaded the background to focus the light on Bethany. I use Lightroom's gradient tool to adjust the exposure on either side so that you focus in on her. Now, in addition, since today's cameras, in particular, I mean, I love my Sony Alpha 99. This camera with the Zeiss 2.8 lenses, to use my word, is just stupid sharp. However, that doesn't often fit in with the mood of most of my portraits. I might be dating myself a little here, but I remember shooting medium format film and using a skylight filter with Vaseline on the edges to soften it. Or another trick that would be done was you'd put a nylon stocking stretched in front of it to soften it. I prefer a softer, more dreamy look. I find it more flattering. Now, to make that editing process easy, I typically use NYX Color Effects Pro. And I use my own personal recipe of 3 combined filters, a polarizer filter, dynamic skin softener, and pro contrast to soften my images. Now, when I shoot landscape photography, I do like to see really crisp and sharp every pebble and twig. However, I don't feel the need to examine every pore and blemish in my portraits. I prefer to present an image that conveys the mood and the essence and the feeling of the subject. Now that's my way, and you're of course free to present your subjects how you like. One thing I can tell you though is, my clients like it. So we've got one last session back in my studio. I'm going to make 2 changes. First, I want to show you that you can create beautiful portraits with a small camera. What I used was my little mirrorless, the Sony NEX7, and I just took the Pocket Wizard Plus 3 off of the big camera, put it on top of here. And again, that's the beauty, excuse me, of these things. They don't care what they're on. They're simple triggers. They're doing one thing. They're telling the lights to fire. So as long as your camera has a standard hot shoe on it, that's all you need. That, I metered the lights, and off we went. The other thing I did, I'm going to a black background. I like using a black background for that really kind of moody kind of portrait. And in this, I'm going to drop down to 3 lights because I really want to create a lot more drama. I'm using 3 lights to shape and separate our subject out for the background. So now we're going to see just the fill, the kicker to illuminate her back, and then a hair light to separate her head from the black background. So let's go back to Warwick one more time, and we'll sum up when we come back live. Okay.
You may share my light.
Oh, I may share her light. I see. Okay. So just for giggles, we're going to take a break in a little bit and go get some lunch. But just to show you that you don't have to have the biggest top-of-the-line camera, I've got a Sony NEX7 here, which is still a fairly high-end camera. Still a 24-megapixel mirrorless camera. But I put the Pocket Wizard Plus 3 on top of here. Everything operates exactly the same. I just tell whatever number is my meter gives me. So I'm at f14. 160th of a second at 100 ISO. I just put those numbers into this camera, fully manual. I'm shooting my main light and the hair light, and that's it. And I'm going to do a series of shots with this camera, and we'll compare them, and I already know they're going to look great. One of the downsides of a camera like this is it does not respond anywhere near as quickly to a DSLR as far as focusing and shooting. So that is a limitation. I wouldn't necessarily want to use this in the studio. Beautiful. Give me eyes. Chin down. Tilt your head this way a little bit. And bring your back shoulder around a little bit. The other way. Right there. That's it. Nice. Just like you are is good. We've had a nice relaxing lunch. It's time to get back to work. So we're just going to change one thing up, and it's going to really have a big effect on the mood. We're doing the same set we just did before. Excuse me, I'm going to use 2 or 3 lights. I've got my main, which again is feathering to the foreground. I've got the hair light above me, I'm also going to probably end up using the kicker over to this side because basically we just threw a black canvas over the background to darken things up. So that's going to change the mood a little bit, and we're going to make the lighting a little more dramatic to accompany that. So Bethany has arrived once again. It's so nice to have you back.
Oh, thank you.
We were just talking, it's been 6 months since we've all been together doing a shoot, and in some ways it doesn't seem that long. It seems like we just saw each other, and then other times we realize it's been 6 months. So anyway, so I'm going to get Bethany in the chair, and she's got a beautiful black dress on. We got the black chair, the black background. So it's important that we have enough lights to separate out her from the background, because if not, then everything's just going to kind of blend together, which is a look, but I don't like it. So I'm going to get her in the chair. We're going to go ahead and re-meet her before we shoot, and then we'll try both the hair light and the kicker with our main. So come on, Bethany, you can sit. This is gorgeous. Oh, that was it. Okay, good. If that looked like fun, yeah, it was. It was great to work with Bethany again. But regardless of your subject, the gear and techniques that we've been using are going to benefit any client. Let's take a look at a couple more questions. Someone asked, said, I measured each light individually, but what is my overall f-stop? I don't want to get too deep into measuring f-stops, but let's just go over one concept again. I've got my main, I think we were at f9, my fill was at 6.3 when I used both lights. So what is the difference between 9 and 6.3? Well, it's one stop. What does that mean? That means it's half as much light. So if they were both at 45 degrees, what would be happening in the middle of the face, I would be adding f9 and 6.3. To make the numbers easier, but by the clicks on your camera, let's say it was 8 and 5.6, easier to see. So 5.6 is half as much light. So what does that mean? That means that the contribution to the center of the face would be 1.5. So it would be 8 plus a half a stop, which is going to be 8.5, which is going to be somewhere in between f9 and f10. The hair light doesn't play a part because it's only illuminating up here and a little bit of a splash on the top of the shoulder. The kicker light was at least 2 stops and sometimes a little bit more, or a little bit more or less. Does that make any sense? Less powerful than the main. 2 stops means it's only putting 1/4 of the light amount out compared to the main. So even if a little bit is splashing on the face, in the total, when you think it's 1/4 of the power compared to the main, that means it's only adding about 1/10 of a stop to the side of the face. It's really not enough to make a contribution. But when we go to one main, again, the kicker and the hair light are not contributing enough to make a difference. All I'm really concerned about is the main. Yes, you have to be careful with the placement. Someone asked, is that a concern? Yes, you can end up splashing a little too much light on the face, and then you're going to get a higher number. But your meter will tell you that. As long as I have that dome out, if my kicker and my hair light are contributing to the side of the face that's lit by the main, when I take that reading, it's going to see it. All I need to do is take this number, put it in my camera, and then I don't have to worry about that. A couple other good questions. Someone asked about, let's see, the main light was at f8, actually it was f8, f9, and now I'm already up to 14. What happened? Why? Why is that? It's really simple. It was distance to the light. Remember, distance falls off, without getting too technical, the square of the distance. So what that means is at 4 feet away, let's say it's f8. If I go 8 feet away, it's not half as much light, it's 1/4 the light. So the light at twice the distance would drop from f8 to f4. By going closer, the same thing's happening. So for example, I'll do a test right here. Let me turn off the cell on this one because it's annoying me. In fact, I'm going to turn the light off. I'm going to take a reading from this distance to the main. And let me get my hand out of the way. And from here, I'm getting 5.6. If I just move this much closer and take another reading, it just went up to f8. So from here to here was 1 stop difference. Just that much distance, twice as much light was hitting me. If I come a little closer, I'm up to F9, get real close, F11. So that's why a meter is important, because it will tell you this. I like using softboxes up close, because when you do, you get a much more gentle wrap around the side of the face, particularly if you've got it feathered coming across the subject's face. So the closer you get, you would think it's going to be harsher. It's not. It's just the opposite. The closer you get, the softer the light. If I go way far away, the break from light to dark is going to be much sharper, because you're reducing the size of the light. It's becoming a point light source. As I get closer, since I have this big light source, it wraps around, so you get a much smoother gradient. You just need to know what that number is. And again, this close, I'm measuring to the light, not back to the camera position. And from right here, it's telling me I'm at F10. I put that number in my camera. Doesn't matter what the hair light's doing, because it's not reflecting back into the camera. This is the only one I'm concerned about, and you get perfect results every time. That's the beauty of a meter. Your camera can't do this. The camera can only measure the light coming back here. It can't measure the light that's falling on your subject. Someone asked, with black on black, do I find more color moire? Color moire being the interference patterns. And I only shoot RAW, so with the RAW and with this camera, I can say no, I don't run into that. That could be a camera by camera basis. I can just tell you with the cameras that I use, I've never experienced that. Someone asked, how do I avoid shadows on the background with the white background? The trick to that is have your subject further off the background. Generally, my subject with a white background, minimum of 5 feet, usually 6 or even a little bit more. When they're that far away the background, any shadows that they cast are going to fall on the ground behind them, and it's going to be gentle. Just do be careful if you're lighting, though. And lastly, someone asked, in the Lightroom edit, how did I get that blue, goes bluish, purplish kind of background? Very simple. When I did the gradient, I added a color to it. It's a very simple thing. I'll do a Lightroom portrait editing session one of these days. Let's see if there's anything else. Let me just refresh. Let's see. So someone asked, do I fix the shutter speed and the ISO in the light meter, or is the aperture the only variable? No, actually, you've got the exposure triangle. You've got your shutter speed, you've got your aperture, and you've got your ISO. You can set any combination of them you want. So if I go on my light meter here, actually Rick is going to zoom in. There we go. So Jen, if you'd switch over to the zoom. So you can see here's my shutter speed. So if I want it to go lower, if I want 1/100th of a second, or I want to bring up my ISO to 400, you can see it tells me the resulting aperture based on what my light measurement was. So yes, you can choose whichever of these works. Put these numbers in what other combination you want into your camera, and that's it. So if I decide I want to come up in shutter speed, what happens? Nothing. Why? The shutter speed, because the shutter speed is much slower than the duration of the strobes. What's really going to only affect it in this case is the ISO. So if I come down 100 ISO, you see that drops down to to F10 again. Let's see. Oh, someone asked if I plan on using the Passport color checker. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't cover this, but you might have seen it fly by in the trailer. If you joined us, you saw Jen holding the color checker at the beginning. Yes, before every session, we take a shot of the color checker Passport. We create a custom profile and a white balance for that based on the lights, and put that in a preset in Lightroom so that every image as it comes in, it gets the correct white balance and the correct custom color profile. Very simple process. I've done that in the past. And lastly, someone asked, can you use a white fill card in place of the kicker too? A fill card, a reflector, etc. Yes, you can. The beauty of having a separate light as your kicker is you have much more control over the power and the direction of it, especially when you've got a grid on it like this. Again, as I mentioned, our next session we're going to use one light and one reflector, and it's going to be a continuous light. So we'll cover really simplifying things down that time. Okay, anything else? No, I think that's about it. So again, what I really wanted to point out was, and Bethany appreciates this too, and she's an experienced model, but she understands that if you have a continuous shooting flow, it becomes much smoother. Your client gets into the rhythm, you get into the rhythm. You eventually start to relax, the lights become less of an issue, you get your subject to move around a little bit, they don't have time to worry. Keep the conversation going. And remember one other important thing. The camera sees both ways. Now, I frequently like to shoot on a tripod when possible, and I'll even shoot with a pocket wizard and won't even be behind the camera. However, if I do have the camera up to my face, I frequently pull it away and I react to my client, to my subject. If you're scowling or you look like you're mad or not having a good time, that's going to reflect to them too. So just always remember the camera sees both ways. If you're having fun and you're excited, then your subject's going to adopt that attitude as well. They're going to see, wow, this is really going well. Maybe I don't look that bad in front of a camera. I hope today's session inspired you to try out some of these techniques. If you don't have 4 lights available, start with what you have, even if it's just one. Add a reflector, start shooting. If you're serious about making money with portrait photography, however, make the investment in tools that will allow you to create great portraits. It really will help to pay for itself in no time because you're going to have more sales and you're going to have happier clients. As always, I'd like to thank Pocket Wizard for sponsoring us and helping us to better control light. In addition, our thanks to both Sekonic and Bowens as well. The Sekonic meter that has the Pocket Wizard control in it really makes life easy. As you've seen, I can just take my meter reading, it talks to the Pocket Wizards and fires. And these Bowens light we used, these are new to us. They provide a consistent light and smooth operation for all the shoots. In fact, I was so pleased with them that our studio has now adopted them for all of our studio and our school photography lighting kits. In our follow-up email, we'll include a complete list of all the gear we looked at today. I know you're going to want to have some of it. We'll be back next week with another approach to portrait lighting. As I mentioned, we're going to use just one light, and something I was never fond of before, but I've changed my mind, is we're going to use one continuous light that uses fluorescent tubes, fluorescent light bulbs, and we're going to use one reflector. Now, in addition, I'm also going to use a portable video LED light as a fill for some ambient light portraits. We've already done the shoot, the results are spectacular, and they represent a completely different approach to lighting. So that's it for today. On behalf of our crew, I thank you for watching, thanks for the great questions, and thanks for your interest. Until next time, keep shooting and have some fun while you're doing it. Bye-bye.